Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Azri bin Azlan and we are going to present about how the pandemic changed the global economy. So basically this is our presentation part and we're moving on to the introduction. So our presentation is about an article analysis titled How the Pandemic Changed the Global Economy, written by the Economist Intelligence Unit. Since we know, due to COVID-19 outbreak, many sectors have been badly affected in terms of profitability and revenue. So how do the government cater this? And in terms of fiscal and monetary policy, so we also take account into inflation and unemployment in the recovery period. And last but not least, the Islamic perspective are going to be derived from this issue. So take note that this presentation focus on the United States country. And let's moving on to Brother Hazim.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Mohamad Hazim bin Mohamad Sairi. My metric number is 191685. I will present about the impact of COVID-19 to the employment and labor market. Pandemic COVID-19 gives a lot of hardship to the big and also small firms. Because of this outbreak, many firms have to lay off workers in order to keep their business continue to operate. Using the classical system, we can relate it with the current situation. There are some determinants that cause output and employment to change, which are preferred to work and leisure, changes in technology, and changes in productivity of labor. Firstly is changes in preference to work. As we know, due to this outbreak, people are afraid to go outside from their home in order to avoid being affected by COVID-19. Therefore, the majority of workers prefer to stay at home instead of going to work. This situation will cause a low preference to work. If we look at the graph, lower preference toward work will shift supply for labor to the left as they prefer leisure instead of work. Shifting to the left will create a new equilibrium in which new real wage level will be at WP1 and the new employment level will be at N1. When people prefer leisure more compared to work, the production level will be reduced. From the aggregate production graph, we can clearly see the output reduced from Y0 to Y1 as more people prefer more leisure instead of work. Secondly is changes in technology. Nowadays, there are various clusters that exist involving the workplace. This situation forces employers to use the latest technology in order to avoid infection of this outbreak in their workplace. The utilization of advanced technology will improve the production firm. If we look at the graph, the changes of technology will have an impact on the demand and the aggregate production curve. As we can see from the graph, if employers start to change technology in their premise, it will shift demand from ND0 to ND1. With the new shifted demand curve, a new equilibrium point will occur. New real wage will be at W1 and the new employment level will be at N1. From an aggregate production curve, it will shift upward with non-parallel manner. Thus, the new output level will be at Y1 and employment level will be at N1. Therefore, we can see that the using technology like advanced machine during this pandemic will increase output and indirectly reduce chances of employees to get infected by COVID-19. Last but not least is changes in productivity of labor. During this pandemic, certain firms have to suffer from the reduction of demand for their product. The reduction in demand will make the productivity of labor change as the demand for the goods for certain firms reduce during this pandemic. When the demand for goods decrease, excess labor will not give any benefit to the firm and instead will create diminishing margin return and make loss to the firm. Due to that, the demand for labor will decrease and will shift the employment demand curve. To be more specific, from the graph, changes in productivity of labor will cause the labor demand curve to shift to the left. This is because during this pandemic, the excess of labor will make a loss for the employers, as the demand for certain goods will decrease and thus the excess of labor will make a loss for the firm. Shifting to the left will create a new equilibrium which is located at WP1 for wage level and N1 for employment level. For the aggregate production curve, the output level will reduce to Y1 due to change in productivity of labor. Therefore, we can clearly see the changes of productivity of labor will cause the demand labor and employment level to shift to the left and cause the output level to be reduced. And also aggregate supply also will shift to the left.
So now we move on to taxes and fiscal sustainability. Government fiscal stimulus measures implemented during the epidemic have resulted in deterioration of fiscal indicators and an increase in public debt. Debt service costs are expected to continue low in the future years, but government will need to address public finance imbalance. Cuts in government spending would be harder to impose politically in the future. The pandemic has brought to light the need for increased government expenditure in a variety of areas, including healthcare. As a result, changing corporation tax arrangement may be politically simpler, yet such changes may have an impact on a country's global appeals as a business destination. Any increase in corporation taxes could hinder future investment and, in certain cases, cause multinationals to relocate their operations to nations with more favorable tax policies. As a result, the majority of developed countries are likely to look for new ways to replenish their treasuries. Governments are likely to enact capital gains taxes or property taxes, which could help to alleviate the growing inequality problems. Another alternative is to tax polluting sectors. This might help government meet their goals of lowering carbon emissions while also improving their approval ratings.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Mirzan bin Mohaimi, and I will be explaining on the monetary policy as part of the article analysis. Government authorities and policymakers are finding methods to stabilize the economy. These methods include in changing in short-term interest rates to influence things like prices of assets, liquidity, and long-term interest rates. The monetary policy that was adopted is quantitative easing, or the QE policy. However, this method is considered as an unconventional monetary policy. Despite that, the policymakers have realized that this unconventional monetary policy have improved the financial conditions and helped in economic growth. For quantitative easing, it is when the central bank or the government buys securities in the hopes to increase their money supplies. When the money supply increases, the LM schedule will shift to the right. With an excess money supply, it will reduce interest rate, resulting in rise in investments. This is to help in promoting investments and lending to the economy.
So let's move on to multiplier effect and long-run inflation or long-term growth. So since we know as the fiscal stimulus, we can see that government spending. So result from this government spending, the production function shift upward. See at this graph illustrated. So as the production function shift upward from C naught I naught G naught to C naught I naught G1, we can see that output increase from Y naught to Y1, but the ratio is not the same. For example, if the government spending increase from G naught to G1 by 100, the output will not increase by 100 because uh, of the government initiative. It also affected the consumer by high purchasing power. So not only government spending increase the output, but also the consumption from the consumer also increase the output. So that is why the multiplier effect takes place. And let's move on to the unemployment and long-run inflation. We start with the short run. As we know, the purchasing power has increased. It can lead to excess demand, as denoted from this shift from YD0 to YD1. So we can see there is a shortage. Because of the shortage, it will push the price up from P0 to P1. Since the price has increased in the labor market, uh, the firms will demand more labor to increase the output. So we can see the shift from ND0 to ND1 in this curve. So the new equilibrium labor market will take place in N1 and W1. So this is for the short run. We can see that an increase in employment will increase the output. It is good for the economy. But for the long run, the labor supplier, they know that the price has gone up. So they will demand higher nominal wages. So there is an increase in labor supply from NS0 to NS1, which result in the increase in the aggregate supply from YS0 to YS1. So we can see that the employment will return to its initial point, which is N0, and also the output also decrease to its initial point, which is Y0. So the end result is only the price has increased from P0 to this point, and also the nominal wage, which is what we call an inflation. So that's conclude the long run inflation. And for the policymaker or the core forecast, they assume that the annual price inflation will stabilize in 2002 until 2025 to cater this occasion. So that's all from me. Let's moving on to the Islamic perspective. Thank you very much.
From the Islamic perspective, their main purpose is to remove income inequality and bring social justice. Some Islamic scholars say that Islamic finance is able to fight the economic problems caused by the pandemic and also provide an alternative financial system other than the conventional financial institution. The Islamic financial system follows the idea of risk sharing, ethical and moral solutions. This is a perfect solution for becoming a system that decides based on the best interests of the poor and the needy, especially during the time of this pandemic. Islamic finance has many great offers. Most Islamic financial system follows theories that are widely acceptable by the contemporary Islamic scholars. Firstly, Islamic finance highlights the importance of equality and social justice. The belief in fairness and equality allows long-term security for generations to come. Next is the act of distributing income or distributing wealth instead of creating new wealth. Wealth distribution can be seen through one of our pillars of Islam, which is zakat, where the rich is it is obligatory for the rich to give out parts of their wealth to the poor. This way of distribution of wealth will help poverty and elevate poverty. Other than zakat, it is the idea of risk sharing, which is also a part of the product in Islamic finance, where people will share the risk instead of giving the risk to other people. The pandemic has allowed the Islamic financial system to shine, allowing them to prove themselves that they can be a great solution for the economic problems during the pandemic. There are many facilities that Islamic finance provides, like musharaka, mudaraba, ijara, salam and istisna, and qad al-hasan, to name a few. Musharaka is a popular financial service that Islamic finance provides. It is the contribution of capital from two or more people, allowing them to do business and share benefit and or loss together. In other words, it can be called as partnership. Other services like mudaraba, on the other hand, is where a contributor or an investor, which is called Rabbul Mal, gives their capital to their manager of the capital, or so-called mudarib, to make use of the funds to make profit. These profit will be shared among them, and any loss will be borne by both of them. Next is ijara. Ijara is giving some of the right to use an asset or property and use the benefit of the asset or property in exchange for fee or rent. To simply put it, renting an apartment is part of an ijara contract. Next is salam and istisna. Salam and istisna is one of the popular financial services that Islamic finance provides. For salam, it is a sales contract where the commodity is sold at a certain date, at a certain future date, but the payment is made during that agreement, where both buyer and seller made an agreement to sell and purchase it. This contract is mostly used in financing for agriculture industry. For istisna, it is the sale contract of manufacturing products. The manufacturer will create a product for a buyer. Unlike salam, the payment for a istisna can be made immediately or in deferred payment. An example of an istisna contract is like a carpenter or a lapidary or a jeweler, where people carve jewel. They will make an agreement to purchase that product at a future date when the product is have completed its manufacture. Yes. Finally is Qard al-Hasan. Qard al-Hasan is also called the benevolent loan. Why it is called the benevolent loan? Benevolent loan is it is free from interest. The interest rate for benevolent loan is 0. This is mainly for short-term liquidity for the borrowers. This allows people to have an opportunity to invest using the loan and be able to pay them back to the financer without any interest. Conventional banking are trying to find ways to low interest rates to encourage spending and investments, but Qard al-Hasan has already solved that problem, where the interest rate for Qard al-Hasan for the loan is 0. This can help people from small industries to grow and finance their company or industry without any burden of interest rates. So that's all from me. Thank you.
As our discussion, we already know that this pandemic have affected many aspects of our country. The coronavirus epidemic has wreaked havoc on the global economy. To combat the pandemic, wealthy countries have pumped unprecedented amount of fiscal stimulus into the economy, causing public debt ratios to reach new highs. Meanwhile, long-term development prospects are bleak, raising concern about the sustainability of such high level of debt, as well as the global implication of the current scenario.